What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we are starting our Hidden Gems series here on Madden 21, and we're actually going to go through quarterbacks today. I have a good group of quarterbacks here for you guys that I believe are going to be a good Hidden Gems list for you. So hopefully this is going to help you guys out in terms of building your franchises and giving yourselves an advantage early on here in Madden 20. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. To start, I want to head down to the bottom of the list and give you guys some players that wouldn't normally be included on this list for various reasons, and basically just call them alternates or honorable mentions, because normally speaking, the range for players to be on this list is going to be in that 20 to 25-year-old range. They're not going to be too far into their careers or anything like that, but they're also not going to be rookies. They're going to be players that you could go out and easily acquire yourself, whether it be for a reason that a player's, on the trade market or they're out there in free agency, whatever that might be. And so a couple of these players wouldn't normally be included on this list. First and foremost, I want to talk about these honorable mentions at the bottom, which would include Josh Love, Brian Lewerke, Kyle Lauletta, and Devlin Hodges I would consider, as well as Trace McSorley. So the reason that I consider these guys honorable mentions is because none of them are franchise changers, but a couple of them are essentially out there in free agency for you guys, or are going to be really, really easy value to get onto your team. So Josh Love is a free agent. He's not amazing. He's got a decent speed at 79, which means he can roll out if you need him to. Brian Lewerke, also a player out there in free agency. He's a rookie. Kyle Lauletta as a 56 overall out there in free agency. And then Devlin Hodges is a player that you'll get off of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he's like the third or fourth quarterback for Pittsburgh. So he's going to be an extremely cheap value if you want to get him. And in addition to that, Trace McSorley is a player that I really like to highlight most of the times because of the fact that he just is so athletic. And he has a decent arm, but he's also got 87 speed. And you can't say that about a lot of quarterbacks. He is 25 years old, but he's a player that you could probably get for pretty cheap off of the Ravens if someone's being the Ravens, especially because they have Lamar. They don't need Trace McSorley, and they have other good backups in RG3 and players like that. So you don't have to worry about Trace McSorley demanding a huge value. And so that's why I give some of these guys runner-up status or honorable mention status. And then I actually wanted to mention in there with them Cole McDonald and Deshaun Kaiser. Deshaun Kaiser's out there in free agency. He's been around for a couple years. And Cole McDonald is a rookie out there in free agency that's 22 years old and a 60 overall. So normally wouldn't be included on the list, but because he's out there as a free agent, he's free for you to get. This would be one of the top targets for you to go after. Now let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the quarterbacks that I have on this list that are on other teams and do kind of meet the requirements that I stated before, and we're going to talk about why they're good values to you guys. So first things first, we want to talk about Jameis Winston. I think this one is pretty obvious. Yes, he's 26, so he doesn't quite fit into the age requirement that we're talking about, but he is 26, and as a quarterback, if you do well with a 26-year-old, you can still develop him into a pretty solid player. There's still time there for his overall to go up, especially if you win him some awards, especially if you get a lot of yardage and a lot of touchdowns. Now, Jameis Winston signed a deal with the Saints, so he's the backup for the Saints. And if you're the New Orleans Saints in a franchise, you're probably going to be looking to keep him around. But with the incoming quarterback class, I think any backup quarterback out here is going to be on the trade market, or even some of these starting quarterbacks, guys like Sam Darnold, are potentially going to be on the trade market because of some of the good quarterbacks that are going to be coming in, especially if you're going to be running a custom draft class in a franchise mode. So Jameis Winston is a player that is potentially on the market because whenever you have Drew Brees out there, if you let Jameis Winston sit the bench, he'll be 27 years old by the time you're using him, and he's not going to go up much in overall. So this is the type of player that has more value on a team that needs a starting quarterback because he can get starting reps and actually develop his talent rather than sitting behind a quarterback, which gets you no XP in Madden. So Jameis Winston is a very good player on this list, and the other reason is he's one of the few players that actually has a good arm strength. I think he's one of the only two players on this list that has above 90 arm strength, the other one being Tyree Jackson. So with that being said, let's go ahead on to our quarterback number 2, which is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, I believe, is a hidden gem player for you guys to go out and acquire here in Madden in 21, because if someone is the Jets and they're a fan of the Jets, they might be soured on Sam Darnold at this point. Now, he has had some varying success, but he's also had some disappointing moments, and I think some Jets fans might be ready to move on from him. So if somebody in your league is willing to trade away Darnold from the Jets, then I would certainly pounce on that opportunity, because he's still only 23 years old. He has a lot of development in front of him. And the reason that I think that, like I said before, that somebody might be willing to trade away a starting quarterback like Darnold is because of some of the quarterbacks coming out in the next draft class. If someone really wants to get Trevor Lawrence, they might trade away Darnold and try to tank in order to get Trevor Lawrence on their team or one of the other top quarterbacks from that draft class. The next quarterback to mention on here is Daniel Jones. Now, this is probably one of the most unlikely trade candidates out there, but if you do select the Giants, you have yourself a hidden gem quarterback, and if you're in a CPU league, you might be able to convince the CPU to trade you Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, it has a lot of potential there for the Giants. Daniel Jones is a 72 overall with 23 years old. He's very similar to Sam Darnold, only has that 1 year of experience, but he also has athleticism, and this is why he's valued even slightly higher than some of those other guys, is that he has this 84 speed. He can move a little bit better, so he's more of a dual threat player. A very good player if you can find a way to get him, but unlikely that you'll be able to pick up a Daniel Jones. Mitchell Trubisky is definitely on this list. Yes, he's 26 years old, so he kind of falls out of that category of what normally being on this list like Jameis Winston does, but he's so good and can be a good quarterback for you in franchise mode that I think he's worth mentioning. Yes, he's only a 72 overall, but he has that dual threat ability. He's got good speed, he has a decent arm, and put in the right system with the right players around him, he could get a lot of yardage, a lot of stats, and he could build his overall up so that he could be a very viable quarterback in any franchise. So I really think that Mitchell Trubisky is a target that people can trade for, and not only that, but the Bears could certainly trade away Mitchell Trubisky at any minute. I mean, their relationship with him isn't fantastic at the moment, and I think that anybody that is a Bears fan or that is running the Bears team in a franchise will probably be looking to get rid of Mitchell Trubisky and move on to something better. Next quarterback here is Dwayne Haskins Jr. Now, Dwayne Haskins Jr. has to be on this list because if you're a Washington football team fan, you probably hate Dwayne Haskins. He threw as many interceptions last year as he did touchdowns. He's not a very good quarterback. I'm not sure why they gave him a 70 overall in Madden, because he certainly does not deserve it. But the potential is there for him to become a good quarterback, and I could very much see somebody trading him away, especially with the return of Alex Smith, or, you know, with the potential for the Redskins to go out and get a high draft pick and potentially draft like a Trevor Lawrence or something like that. I don't see any reason why Dwayne Haskins wouldn't be on the trade block. Now, he might fetch a decent demand because of the fact that he is still a 70 overall in Madden and 23 years old, but he, again, is a player that has a pretty decent arm and could turn out to be a good player for you. Another player that has to be on this list is Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota is another player that is much like Mitchell Trubisky that could go out and help your team. But even more so, I feel like Marcus Mariota might have the most potential to come out here and be upgraded in terms of overall in comparison to guys like Mitchell Trubisky and Jameis Winston. Marcus Mariota is actually coming over from Las Vegas, the Raiders, so he's not a starting quarterback there, and he's not going to be a starting quarterback there anytime soon. But the value here with Marcus Mariota is that he's got a decent arm on top of having 88 speed and 90 acceleration. He is a threat in the run game, and probably the best one on this list. If we sort by speed, I believe he's the highest speed on this list. So coming in at a 68 overall with 88 speed is certainly not bad whatsoever. This is a player that you could utilize on your team even if you don't want him to start. You could utilize him in a dual quarterback set, or a dual quarterback offense where you call him in on certain plays and use him for certain plays. That would be a way to use him. He's certainly a player that could add value to your team, and a player that you could probably get at a reasonable price because he is a backup. The next hidden gem player on this list is Josh Rosen, and Josh Rosen's going to be on this list for a while because of the fact that he entered the NFL at such a young age. I mean, he was 21 years old, so he's going to be on this list pretty much every year because he's still only 23, and a 67 overall quarterback at 23 years old could be developed into a all-time starter for your team. I don't think I have to say much more than that, but, you know, he's not a dual threat or anything like that, but he adds value because of his age and his overall combination, and the fact that he's on the Dolphins, and the Dolphins just got Tua, so there's no reason that the Dolphins need to hang on to a guy like Josh Rosen, so that one's a very important quarterback for you guys to look out for. Now, another one that I like quite a bit is Nick Mullens. Nick Mullens is a 25-year-old, 66 overall. He's not going to, you know, skyrocket in terms of overall or anything like that, but you could develop him into a serviceable quarterback. And he's the backup to Jimmy Garoppolo. There's no reason that a team wouldn't be willing to trade him away, and you could probably get him for a reasonable price. The next player here on the list I like a lot, and that's Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen is also coming over from Washington. If a player or if a user that is controlling Washington wants to hang on to Dwayne Haskins, you can certainly get away with trading for Kyle Allen early on in a franchise. Kyle Allen is the third quarterback on that team in terms of overall behind Haskins and Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen has a lot of potential. He did well last year. He's a 24-year-old with 65 overall, and he actually has some amount of athleticism to boot. So he is a potential dual threat quarterback that you could turn into a very good starter for your team, and this is probably one of the best candidates on this list if you're looking for a hidden gem quarterback that's not going to be expensive to fill that void. The next one is Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, there's an interesting situation there in Pittsburgh where I can't really see Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges becoming the starter for Ben Roethlisberger in a franchise, because if these guys sit behind Ben Roethlisberger in a franchise, they're not going to get any XP. But this is a guy in Mason Rudolph that you could trade for, and you could probably develop him into a half-decent quarterback. The reason being is that he's still a 63 overall. Yes, he's 25 years old, so you're not going to make him the best quarterback in the world, but he has a really good arm, and you could turn him into a very viable player. If you're not looking to go other routes, you're not looking to overpay for a player, consider going after Mason Rudolph and give him some attempts, give him a tryout. He might do wonders for your team. I've used him personally, and you know, I typically do well with pretty low overall quarterbacks, but Mason Rudolph is one of my favorite low overall quarterbacks because his arm just works. You know, he throws the ball where you want him to throw it. He doesn't miss a lot of passes. The next one, which is probably one of the best ones on this list again, is Easton Stick. Only 23 years old, a 62 overall. Again, a good age and overall combination, but one of the most athletic players on this list. So we're looking at a guy with 85 speed, a guy that is really athletic, and a guy that has a decent arm. So Easton Stick is a very good potential player that you guys could go out and get. He's actually coming over from the Chargers. Now, the Chargers drafted Herbert, so why would they hold on to Easton Stick? There's no reason for them to. They also have Tyrod, a veteran player in front of him. So whether that team decides to go with Tyrod as their veteran starter or they decide to go with Herbert, there's no reason for them to hang on to Easton Stick. You should be able to get him for a reasonable price, and he could certainly develop into a viable starting quarterback for you guys. Now, I believe that I already mentioned Cole McDonald as a honorable mention because he's out there in free agency as a rookie, but I want to highlight him again because how can you pass up on a 60 overall 22-year-old rookie quarterback out there in free agency? He could potentially be a very good player, and not only that, he's got the speed to boot. I mean, he's one of the faster players on this list. He's got 86 speed, so I have to highlight him one more time. And then the last player on this list that is my favorite hidden gem player, always in my Madden hidden gems lists, Tyree Jackson. Tyree Jackson's an absolute monster. He's 22 years old at this point, so he's still super young, one of the youngest players on this list, but in addition to that, he's got 85 speed, so he's a very athletic player. He can move around. He should not be listed as a rookie because he's not a rookie anymore. He's actually a first-year player or a one-year experience player. I guess it'd be a second-year player. And then on top of that, this is one of the best things about this player is that he's got 95 throw power, and I believe that's the highest throw power of anybody on this list. Tyree Jackson can turn into an absolute monster at quarterback. If you're not aware of Tyree Jackson, go out and get Tyree Jackson in your franchise. Yes, he's only a 57 overall, but if you work on him and you really focus on it, you can make him into an absolute beast. Right now, as a 57 overall, starts off, like I said, with 85 speed and 95 throw power. How can you possibly beat that in a rookie quarterback or a young quarterback that's going to take over your franchise? Yes, he'll struggle with missing passes early on, and yes, some of those missed passes will be more emphasized because of the fact that he has 95 throw power, so he'll miss a little bit further away from players than another quarterback would. But just imagine an 85 speed player, 95 throw power, that's like a 90 overall. You're looking at a guy that is going to be an absolute tear in this league. You're looking at the next Russell Wilson or something like that. And not only that, but he can really break a tackle or he can break a sack. I mean, he's 6'7", 249 pounds. He is just like the perfect quarterback in Madden. If only he had that accuracy and that ability and found the right coach in real life, he could really be a good quarterback. But with that being said, he's not really going to find much success in the NFL, I don't believe. In Madden, you should have a ton of success with him. He should be maybe the first person you go and try and sign in a franchise if you're somebody that's looking for a quarterback. Highly recommend you go and get Tyree Jackson. With that being said, that is our quarterback hidden gems list. These are players that are going to help your team out right away if you want to give yourself an advantage here in franchise mode early on. If you guys want, I'm going to certainly continue this this hidden gems series. Just let me know which positions you most want to see next, but as of right now, I just plan to go through the positions one by one and maybe alternate between defense and offense. But with that being said, I hope this helps you guys out in some way. If it does, make sure you leave a like on the video, make sure you comment down below with what you guys would like to see next, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I hope to see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys have a good night. See ya.